Local Issues meeting at Monday the 27th of February at 10 a.m. Just go through the members of the committee. We have myself, Councillor Graham Turner, Paul Davis and Councillor Eric Firth, who's substituting for Councillor Naheed Mather, who's on holiday. Minutes of the previous meeting, can we agree those? Yep. Interest, has any of the elected members got any interest to declare? No. Admission to the public, there's nothing that we can't admit the public to this morning. Any deputations and petitions?
Yes, one deputation received from Mr Beardsworth. If we could start the timer now, please.
Welcome, Mr Beardsworth. You've got 5 minutes.
So I'm here to speak about the changes to the traffic lights being installed outside 819 Halifax Road at the top of Walton Lane and the junction of Skulls Lane. I'm representing my business, Beardsworth Nurseries. We operate 3 sites around Cleckheaton. Our main site's at Whitehall Road near Chamber. Then we have Hartshead Nurseries, which is behind 819 Halifax Road, that's on this junction. And then we have Brickhill Farm, that's in between those 2 sites. At Hartshead Nurseries, at 819 Halifax Road, we have 3 full-time staff. We have several vehicle movements a day from cars, tractors, 3.5-ton trucks, and the occasional 7.5-ton truck uses that small entrance. It's quite a busy little driveway, to say the least. Up there we grow field-grown fruit, alpines, and we also have a wholesale cut flower business that has visiting florists. Now, the current entrance is far from great, if we're honest. To exit to Cleckheaton or to enter from Bailiff Bridge requires a U-turn across the dual carriageway. We regularly have visiting florists, so it can be confusing to someone who's not been before how to gain entry. But our worst problem is coming from either Skulls or Cleckheaton. People expect you to sweep left to go down to Brighouse, when actually we're doing quite a tight turn into our driveway, which is on the slip road pretty much, and people don't expect you to turn. And I've had several occasions where I've been nearly rear-ended. Your previous proposal for the changes to this junction was a pair of roundabouts, which I had absolutely no objection to at all, because essentially it cured all these problems for us. Egress and entry was obvious. You just go out and around the roundabout. You have to enter around the roundabout and back in. People expect you to slow for a roundabout, so you're less likely to get rear-ended. What else? So exit and entries just would have been much better. Now, these new proposals of forester traffic lights literally makes every single one of these problems we have with our entry and egress even worse. We've now got to, if this goes ahead, all our staff and our vehicles will have to cross one lane of traffic. To go to Cleckheaton or Skulls, we'll have to pull out into traffic, block for the first lane until the second lane then lets us out, to then turn left. We then have to go down the road to do a U-turn in Sunnybank Close, and then come back through 2 sets of traffic lights before we can then go to Cleckheaton or Skulls. I don't know if anybody has driven a tractor, but tractors, nobody lets you out into traffic. To then pull out across one lane, block another lane of traffic, before you can then be let out again into the next step before you can turn left it's ill-conceived, I think. Sorry, I've lost my track. Yes, and then any visitors who haven't been before, gaining entry to our premises is going to be extremely confusing. It's bad now, but with several sets of traffic lights involved, it's just going to be even worse. And then there's the turning left from Cleckheaton into our driveway, which currently involves an unexpected slow. So you're going to be slowing unexpectedly now, but there's going to be a green traffic light just 10 yards in front. I mean, people just don't expect you to slow down to turn sharply left right on a traffic light in a fairly hidden driveway. So I'm here to urge you to go back to the roundabout proposal. I thought it was simply better. I just don't see any reason for all these traffic lights, and it would impact my business.
Okay, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
sorry, over to officers to give us their presentation. Who's leading this one? Okay. Are you going to are we getting something on screen?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. We share that there. Well, there we go. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and Councillors. So a little bit of an introduction about what the scheme is and what we intend to achieve with it being there. So, as was mentioned earlier, the original proposal was a pair of roundabouts at what we call the staggered crossroads arrangement on Halifax Road junction with Walton Lane and Scholes Lane. Now, the reasons why the roundabout proposal was drawn up initially was to allow better turning movements from the side roads onto the main Halifax Road, and allow a priority sort of working around a roundabout system. Now, whilst it achieved a number of benefits for vehicles, it hasn't got the same provision for vulnerable road users, for example, pedestrians and cyclists. So the traffic signals will achieve far more benefits for all road users, traffic, pedestrians, equestrians, horse riders, cyclists, etc. So we sort of describe it as a staggered crossroads because the two side roads aren't opposite each other, so the traffic signals proposed take that into account and operate in an integrated manner. Now, at this junction, the pedestrians will be catered for with green band facilities, push-button units on the crossing points. And it's really for that reason why we had to ban the U-turns from the central part of the junction. Now, when this was consulted upon, that was the main objection. We received two objections about the U-turn provisions, the bans on U-turns. And we are providing the U-turn opportunity to the southwest and northeast of the main junction itself. So just beyond the care home, there's a gap in the central reserve being created. And at Sunnybank, there's also going to be a facility to allow the U-turn to take place there. So we have tested those U-turn positions, and they do allow a swept path of larger vehicles with 7.5-ton vehicles. And that can be safely performed at that point. Now, if that movement was taking place in the centre of the junction, at Walton Lane or at Scholes, that's where the conflicts would arise with how the traffic signals will operate. Because we have pedestrian features on there, and the way that the signal timings and phasing is being designed, a U-turn would have a vehicle turning back on itself and potentially in conflict with the crossing phase of the pedestrians. Now, if we had to separate that again and create a facility for U-turns, it would take more capacity out of the junction and make it less resilient for future growth in the area. And that's another point I'd like to make about that comparison with the roundabout scheme opposed to the traffic signal scheme. There's more resilience in the signal scheme than the roundabout scheme because you can control the way that the traffic enters the mainstream on Halifax Road with the controller of the traffic signals. So what we see here is a system of traffic management that's more resilient, more flexible than the roundabout scheme, but to make it operate as efficiently and effectively as possible, and for safety reasons, we have to restrict the U-turn movements from within the junction to just either side of it, so the traffic can negotiate safely and efficiently around the system. I can answer other questions if that's all for now.
Anybody got any questions? Paul?
Yep. Thanks for that. Couple of questions. In terms of the U-turn or the proposed changes in the U-turn, how far away from this junction are those?
So I don't know if the plan can go back on the screen again, but within the screen that you can see, the top corner, the bottom left-hand corner, the top right corner, they're the two locations where the U-turns will be permitted. Incidentally, I'd like just to point out that's not shown on that drawing is that what we call the service road, which is the sort of top lane of what you can see there in front of the houses, in front of the business on the top of Halifax Road. A U-turn is allowed there from coming out of the service road. In other words, as you look at the drawing, travelling towards the northeast and then back down towards the southwest, that U-turn will be permitted because there is a business on there that would benefit from that as well as the residents. So that is allowed as well. I'd just like to point out as well, because there was concern about the roundabout itself being a solution, a better solution for U-turns, etc. And whilst that is a fact to consider, it is more straightforward to do a U-turn as a roundabout, and that is a given point to make. It's the approach speeds of vehicles towards a roundabout system because of the nature of the right angles of the way that the roads connect. It can be difficult to achieve what we call deflection on the approach to a roundabout that is able to mitigate excessive speeds approaching a roundabout. Now, with this particular junction, the dominant flow is the Halifax Road flow into Cleckheaton and away to Halifax. And because that is a thing to be aware of, that's where the speeds tend to be the highest. So traffic signals, by virtue of the way they operate, they create stops and starts in traffic and gaps in traffic. And these gaps are the gaps that can be taken advantage of by the U-turn drivers at the two extremes of the junction. And we probably will be considering protecting those U-turn spaces with the provision of keep clear markings or box junctions, yellow box junctions, to make sure that those gaps are retained when people are stopping at the lights further down the system.
Eric, you've got a question?
Matthew. When Matthew says you've got to take a sharp right and is at the risk of being rear-ended because of there's no time for the other in the traffic flow for people behind him to slow down. It's almost because he got a whip in to his premises. Is that the right term?
Yeah, I think but the hand is where the hand that's on there at the moment on the screen, which keeps disappearing, is where Mr. Bellis's entrance is. And I think it's important to note that it will be a single lane approach there. At the moment, it was across 2 lanes of traffic. So at the moment, they crossed over to the outside lane to U-turn in the existing facilities and come back. When the signals are there, it'll be a single lane approach. So they'll be joining traffic rather than trying to get across 2 lanes of traffic at that location. Obviously, the speed reduction as well. They'll be pulling away from a set of signals. So traffic will be slow moving than it is currently because it's free flowing at the moment. So I can appreciate the difficulties that they have at the moment, but this is the scheme itself is aimed at reducing the number of killed and seriously injured collisions that have occurred at this double junction. So we're hoping that whilst we appreciate there will be additional traffic, additional distances to travel to come and go, that's the distance is what we believe is a benefit to the general public and pedestrians and cyclists as well moving around there.
Thank you. Paul?
Yep, thanks for that. So I was going to ask about the safety. Clearly, the safety aspects are central to this, aren't they, in that regard, both the road users and pedestrians. In terms of the traffic lights themselves, obviously, as you say, traffic lights always control traffic in the sense that they stop and whatever. But are they? Is the sequencing designed as such so that it will assist in controlling the flow, and in particular, as you said, the U-turns? As such, is that a deliberate part of the scheme, or are they primarily focused on the junctions?
Again, if we can put the drawing back on the screen. So let's use an example to demonstrate the point as best we can. So imagine driving from the top right and going in a sort of top right to bottom left direction. As you get to the junction with Walton Lane and you want to do a U-turn, that U-turn at that point would conflict with the pedestrian crossing the road adjacent to Scholes Lane, just coming from there. So, and vice versa, if people are coming from the bottom left direction going towards the top right direction and gets to Walton Lane, that U-turn there again would conflict with pedestrian movements. So the urban traffic control engineers, what we call the UTC department, they've looked at this issue and they've designed a sequence of turns and stops, and while I'm driving, that stream stops and this stream goes and they turn and this, that and the other. There's a sort of an arrangement being, drawn up which separates everybody to be out of conflict with each other. The U-turn messes with that sort of arrangement effectively. So, yeah. And not only that, it takes out what we call reserve capacity. So I mentioned at the beginning that this junction, being controlled by traffic signals, has got resilience to deal with changes in traffic patterns and flows. You can, adjust the controller and the lights give various red and green times to the various arms. And that's what that's what a roundabout system can't do. One of the things that this is a benefit over the roundabouts is when you have a dominant flow system where Halifax Road is a dominant flow, it's hard to get a gap in the traffic, and traffic signals share out the delays and benefits in a different way.
Mr. Beatsell, did you want to come back? Because I can use my discretion to allow you to come in at this point.
Has any consideration been made to the fact that most of the serious collisions at this junction are speeding traffic from Bailiff Bridge? It's nearly every single serious collision has been that. And you're proposing for the U-turn to be at Sunnybank Close, which is even further down the road and into those speeding traffic. Is there anything proposed to sort out speeders coming from Bailiff Bridge?
So what I didn't mention again earlier, is because there's so many elements to this scheme, is that the existing the existing speed limit at the junction is 40 miles an hour. And one of the things we're doing with this junction improvement is introducing a 30 mile an hour section to replace the existing 40 mile an hour system. But we are retaining the design requirements for a higher speed road. In other words, the design of the traffic signal detection system that's the underground loops within the tarmac take account of approach speeds of traffic from beyond the footprint of what you see on the screen. So as vehicles approach at a certain speed, the traffic signals can react and take that into account and not just spring a red light on a driver that's approaching too quickly. So there is an element of speed management within the design of the signals to take that exact concern you've got into account. And again, comparing it to the roundabout option where the dominant flow would be the Halifax Road flow, where there's little deflection on a roundabout, where speeds could be higher on an average over the whole day compared to the signals. It's an intrinsically safer system because you're going to have to stop or start or slow down at an amber or whatever. So there's more traffic control in the area to limit inappropriate speeds going through the junction. But as with anything, there will be times when drivers aren't driving with due care and attention, but that is across the board. That is with a roundabout system, with a signal system, without anything at all. The accidents that we are seeing there, the majority of them are people on the side roads trying to get onto Halifax Road. And again, I think I've mentioned it, it's what we call gap acceptance. So when they see an opportunity to pull onto the main road, it's the speed of the traffic that sometimes catches people out. So where they see a gap, there may be a gap, but the cars approaching that gap are going too quickly, and that's why accidents happen. So the traffic signals are a better way of managing speeds on the approaches and dealing with that type of conflict.
Okay, any of you two got any more questions? So I'll just, from my point of view, I have driven this road, but I wouldn't say I know it well, but I had a really, really good look on Google Maps and Street View yesterday afternoon. and I also checked the data out on the national crash map, and there has been a significant number of accidents here, one fatality and one serious injury in the last 2 or 3 years, and it seemed to be there was a serious-ish accident every year. So, looking at it, it is a bitty junction, isn't it? It's a bit of a complicated affair with the grass in the middle there. So, I take on board what you said about the roundabouts, and there might have been a solution, but like you say, you can't control the flow there, and we know that perhaps in the future there'll be developments, and we can rephase the lighting to meet any future demands. So this is a flexible system, whereas, as we know, as you rightly pointed out, roundabouts are not flexible, and the dominant traffic flow tends to dominate the access in and out of traffic at roundabouts. So no system is perfect, never will be, but I think this is a really good system and a really good scheme that should hopefully make life easy for people and prevent some of those serious accidents occurring. So we're going to attempt to vote now on a new voting system. So, are we ready, Jodie? We are the guinea pigs for this new system, by the way, so bear with us. IT to the rescue. Yes, we have it. Right. You press your buttons. And there we have it. All three of us are agreed to support this scheme. Thank you very much for your attendance and your input to this morning's debate. I hope you feel that you've had a fair chance and listened to an interesting debate. Yeah, okay. And I'd just like to thank the officers for attending this morning and presenting us with this scheme, and let's hope we can get this moving and get this injunction improved. And that's the end of the meeting. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending this morning.